The rain-slicked streets of Manhattan glistened under the fractured neon glow, painting the asphalt in a restless mosaic of red and gold. Somewhere above the choking steam vents and the low hum of idling traffic, the city groaned like an overworked beast. Wolverine moved through it with the silent, predatory stride of someone who knew the streets were as much a hunting ground as they were a home. His senses were raw tonight, sharpened not just by instinct, but by the gnawing worry clawing at the back of his mind. Jean. He'd seen it in her eyes, earlier at the Hellfire Club. That shimmer of fire too bright to belong to any mortal soul. She wasn't just Jean Grey anymore. She was the Phoenix, and Logan knew that kind of power drew scavengers from every corner of the galaxy. A flicker in the distance pulled him from his thoughts. A pulse of light, far too precise to be lightning, rippled through the skyline. Logan froze, nostrils flaring. The scent hit him first, acrid, alien, like engine grease burned in a vacuum. Then came the sound. The faint rumble of a motor, not from any Harley-Davidson he'd ever heard, but something deeper, almost alive. The roar grew until it drowned out the city, and then it was there, a massive chrome monstrosity of a space cycle, tearing through the thin veil of dimensional fabric as casually as a drunk kicking in a saloon door. Its rider was a mountain of leather and muscle, pale as moonlight, hair wild and thick as barbed wire, a grin carved into his face like a war scar. His eyes, burning crimson under the shadow of his goggles, scanned the streets like a predator looking for fresh kill. Logan didn't need his nose to know trouble when it was about to step on his lawn. The biker rolled to a stop, the pavement beneath him cracking from the sheer weight of the machine. "All right, you fraggin' mudball," he growled to himself, voice like gravel rattling in a tin drum. "Let's find this fiery broad and get me my paycheck." A chain uncoiled from his gauntlet with a metallic hiss, dragging along the asphalt like a snake eager for blood. Logan stepped out from the shadows, his silhouette framed by the orange glare of a nearby bodega sign. "You lost, bub?" His voice carried that low, dangerous rasp that had ended more than a few bad nights before they started. The alien's grin widened. "Nah, found exactly what I was looking for. Name's Lobo. Ever heard of me?" "Can't say I have," Logan replied, crossing his arms, "but I can smell the stink of bad news from a mile away." Lobo laughed, a booming, joyless sound that echoed off the brick walls. "Good. Means we're already past the introductions. Now, be a good little runt and point me toward the redhead with the cosmic firebird problem. She's worth a lot of creds and I ain't in the mood for detours." Every muscle in Wolverine's body tightened. Jean was already dancing too close to the edge, and the last thing she needed was some off-world bounty hunter trying to drag her into whatever backwater hellhole he called home. He took a step forward, rain beating on his leather jacket, eyes locked on the Zarnian, like he was measuring the distance between them in heartbeats. "Not gonna happen," Logan said flatly. The pause between them was a loaded gun. Then Lobo's chain lashed out like lightning, aiming to hook Wolverine's arm. But Logan's claws snapped from their sheaths with a sound that split the night, adamantium flashing under the streetlights. The chain met the claws mid-swing, sparks spraying into the air. What followed was less a fight and more an explosion, wearing the skin of two men. Lobo fought like a man born in chaos, each swing of his hook carrying the weight of worlds, while Wolverine's style was pure, unfiltered rage, each slash and stab honed by a lifetime of surviving impossible odds. The street became their battlefield. In the Sunyuya Chima Cars crumpled under Lobo's wild swings. Storefronts shattered from Logan's bone-snapping throws. Somewhere in the chaos, Logan caught sight of the fire in the sky, a burning streak heading toward the Empire State Building. Jean. Both fighters froze for a fraction of a second as the ground trembled, and then the world split open in a burst of gold and silver light. From the rifts stepped figures in alien armor, crests glinting with the unmistakable sigil of the Shi'ar Empire. One of them leveled a blaster at Lobo. "The Phoenix is ours. Stand down, mercenary," the bounty hunter spat, chain swinging lazily as his grin returned. "Looks like the party's getting good." Logan's claws flexed. "Yeah, and I got a feeling we're both on the wrong guest list." The rain poured harder, the three-way collision of worlds just seconds from igniting. And neither Wolverine nor Lobo had any idea they were already pieces in a game being played far beyond either universe. The Shi'ar squad moved in a flawless diamond formation, armor shimmering with refracted light as their boots splashed into the rainwater pooling on the street. Their leader, a towering figure with a crimson-plumed helm, fixed his eyes on Lobo like he'd been tracking him across galaxies. "Zarnian, your contract ends here. This world is under Shi'ar jurisdiction as long as the Phoenix is present." Lobo's grin twitched somewhere between amusement and insult. "Jurisdiction? On this dirtball? Hate to break it to you, pal, but the main man don't recognize anyone's jurisdiction but his own." His chain whirred as he began swinging it overhead in lazy circles, droplets of water flinging into the air with each rotation. Logan wasn't any more impressed. "You clowns think you can just stroll in here and take her. Jean's not some trophy for you to hang on a wall." One of the Shi'ar stepped forward, voice cold through his helmet's speaker. "Jean Grey is host to a cosmic parasite capable of extinguishing stars. The Phoenix must be terminated before it consumes her completely." That was all it took to snap the tension like glass. Wolverine lunged first, not at Lobo this time, but at the soldier who dared to speak about killing Jean. His claws flashed silver in the streetlight, tearing through the alien's blaster in one swipe. In the same heartbeat, Lobo's chain caught another Shi'ar by the neck, yanking him clear off his feet and slamming him into the side of a delivery truck, hard enough to leave a dent the size of a crater. The Shi'ar formation broke instantly, blasters firing in a synchronized volley. Bolts of searing energy lit up the street like a 4th of July gone wrong. Wolverine zigzagged between the fire, his body low and coiled, claws carving glowing arcs through the misty air. Lobo took the opposite approach, absorbing hit after hit, with a laugh that bordered on feral joy, his body healing almost as fast as the blast could burn him. And then the air shifted. A guttural roar rolled through the rain like thunder, deeper than any engine. The shadows between the buildings seemed to thicken, and from them emerged hulking shapes with wings that blotted out what little light was left. Parademons, dozens of them, each bristling with jagged armor and cruel weapons, their yellow eyes burning like coals. They swarmed down the facades of the buildings, smashing through glass, their talons scraping sparks off brick and steel. The Shi'ar immediately shifted formation, their disciplined lines breaking under the sheer chaos of the invasion. Wolverine didn't need to know their language to recognize the panic in their orders. Lobo tilted his head, chain slack at his side, and gave a low whistle. "Well, ain't this a nice surprise? That's Darkseid's cannon fodder if I ever saw it. Guess my employer's got his grubby mitts in deeper than I thought," Logan snarled, stepping into Lobo's line of sight. "Start talking. Who hired you?" "Relax. Short stuff. All I know is someone paid top creds for the redhead. Said she was packing the juice to crack open something called the Source Wall. Never mentioned the flying gargoyles. Before Logan could respond, a parademon dove at them, spear raised high. In one fluid motion, Wolverine slashed upward, severing its weapon arm, while Lobo's chain whipped around its throat, snapping vertebrae with a sickening crunch. The body hit the pavement hard enough to shake the nearby street lamps. The battlefield had collapsed into pure bedlam. Shi'ar soldiers were locking blades with parademons, blasts of alien energy and bursts of apocalyptic fire arcing through the downpour. Civilians fled in every direction, their screams drowned beneath the chaos. And somewhere above it all, a fiery silhouette streaked across the night sky. Wings of pure flame cutting through the clouds. Jean Grey. For a heartbeat, everything slowed. Logan's eyes locked on her, and even from here, he could feel the Phoenix radiating off her in waves, the heat prickling his skin. He didn't know if she was in control. He didn't know if she'd recognize him, but he knew that if Darkseid's people and the Shi'ar were both after her, the stakes were higher than anything he'd faced since Weapon X. Lobo followed his gaze, eyes narrowing at the fiery figure. Well, would you look at that? She's even prettier than the Holopix. He revved his space cycle, the roar cutting through the din of war. Come on, Runt, let's go bag ourselves a bird. Logan stepped in front of the cycle, claws raised. We're not bagging her, we're saving her. And if you try anything else, I'll make sure you're not laughing when you wake up. For a second, Lobo's grin faltered. Then he chuckled, revving the throttle again. Fine, but if we're saving her, we're doing it my way. The street shuddered again, this time not from battle, but from something else, deeper, more distant, as if the fabric of reality itself was straining. Above the skyline, the Phoenix wheeled sharply, as if sensing the same thing. And somewhere beyond the rain and smoke, a boom tube began to open. Logan and Lobo didn't know it yet, but the real fight, the one that would decide which universe claimed the Phoenix, was about to begin. The night split open with a sound that didn't belong to Earth. Not thunder, not the groan of breaking steel, but the shuddering howl of a world being ripped in two. A sphere of blinding white light, irised open in the middle of the rain-slick street, its edges sparking like molten wire. Wolverine's stomach tightened. He'd heard descriptions of portals before, strange holes in space used by gods, aliens, and worse. But the presence that poured out of this one was heavier than anything he'd felt in years. It wasn't just a door opening. It was a predator stepping through. From the light emerged Kalibak, the torturer. A wall of muscle and armor, skin the color of rusted iron, his jaw lined with teeth meant for tearing flesh. In his hands was a shock prod that hummed with lethal power, arcs of energy skittering along its length. His heavy boots cracked the asphalt like eggshells with every step. Behind him came Steppenwolf in crimson warplate, the kind that looked forged from centuries of battle trophies, his eyes shining like molten coals. Around them, a dozen Justifiers fanned out, their black armor gleaming with the crest of apocalypse, their weapons humming in tune with the boom tube's dying echo. The Shi'ar line wavered for the first time, their formation fracturing under the weight of a new enemy, whose very arrival seemed to press down on the air. Rain hissed against steaming armor as the smell of ozone and scorched stone rolled out from the portal. Kalibak's voice thundered across the block. The Phoenix belongs to Darkseid. Step aside, vermin, or be reduced to ash. Wolverine stepped forward, claws sliding from his knuckles with that metallic snikt that was both a warning and a promise. You boys always introduce yourselves with threats, or is this a special occasion? Lobo's grin widened into something wolfish. He looped his chain around his fist, letting the hook dangle just enough to catch the glint of the streetlights. I like this guy. Ugly, mean, talks too much. Reminds me of my ex. The rain hung in the air for a breath before the street erupted into violence. Parademons dropped from the sky in screaming swarms, their jagged wings slicing the rain into silver ribbons. Shi'ar soldiers broke formation, firing up at them, while Justifiers advanced on foot, shields locking, forcing everyone into brutal close quarters. Wolverine didn't hesitate. He hurled himself into the crush, claws finding weak points in alien armor with surgical precision. A Justifier's rifle clanged against his skull, and he barely flinched before carving the weapon in half and planting a boot in the soldier's chest. Across the chaos, Lobo fought like a demolition derby come to life. Tieto dies. He descended, his chain lashed out, coiling around a parademon's throat, dragging it from the air before smashing it headfirst into the hood of a taxi. Another swung in behind him, and Lobo caught it by the wrist, snapping the bone with a casual twist before using the body as a club against two more. He moved without rhythm, his brawling a storm of muscle, laughter, and carnage that seemed to make the parademons hesitate. If only for a second. Logan's nose caught it before his eyes did. That scent of fire and starlight, like a forest burning under a night sky. He looked up and saw her. Jean Grey, suspended in the air, wings of flame unfurling behind her, the Phoenix Force blazing in every line of her body. Even at this distance, her gaze burned into him. A flash of recognition, then something deeper, a flicker of fear. Kalibak roared, raising his shock prod high, and charging through the melee toward her. Wolverine intercepted him mid-stride, their collision a thunderclap that sent ripples through the rainwater. The prod crashed against Logan's crossed claws, sparks erupting in a blinding halo. Pain surged through his arms, the electricity biting into muscle and bone, but he held the line, snarling into Kalibak's face. Not today. He twisted, angling the claws to rake along Kalibak's forearm, slicing deep before ducking under the next swing. Lobo, meanwhile, was already gunning a space cycle, plowing straight through a wall of Justifiers like they were bowling pins. His target wasn't Kalibak, it was Jean. He reached her in a spray of water and shattered pavement, swinging the bike in a wide arc and skidding to a stop just beneath her. One arm shot up, catching her around the waist in a grip like steel. "Easy now, hot stuff," he said, flashing a grin that was more mischief than menace. "I'm the one they warned you about." "Lobo, don't!" Logan's voice cut through the chaos. But it was already too late. Lobo revved the engine, the bike's roar merging with the guttural hum of the boom tube still hanging in the air. Jean's eyes flared gold. "You don't understand. It's not just them." Her words were drowned out by the sound of space itself folding. The boom tube widened in a burst of light, and something deeper, darker, began to bleed through. The temperature dropped, the air vibrating with an ancient, unshakable will. Every parademon paused mid-flight. Every Shi'ar gun lowered, as if instinct told them to bow. From the heart of the light, two words rumbled, like mountains grinding together. "Bring her." Wolverine's blood went cold. He knew that voice without ever hearing it before. Darkseid. And somewhere in the corner of his mind, a part of him knew they were already in over their heads. And the only chance they had was standing next to him, grinning like he was on the best bar fight of his life. The moment Darkseid's voice rolled through the night, the battlefield changed. The new gods surged forward with renewed purpose, their lines tightening, their strikes sharper, as if the very syllables had sharpened their resolve. Kalibak slammed his shock prod into the ground, sending a shockwave that split the street and hurled Shi'ar soldiers into storefronts. Steppenwolf's blade sang through the rain, each swing dropping a parademon or Shi'ar alike. Anyone in his way was fair game in the name of his master. Lobo dropped his boot to the space cycle's pedal, ready to blast through the boom tube with Jean still locked under his arm. He wasn't running. He was cashing in. But Wolverine was faster. With a guttural yell, he leapt, claws digging into the bike's rear frame. Sparks screamed off the pavement as Logan dragged the machine backward with sheer stubbornness, his boots tearing twin scars into the asphalt. "You think you're walking out of here with her?" Wolverine snarled over the roar of the engine. Lobo glanced back, grinning despite the strain. "Not walking short stuff. Riding. Big difference." Before Logan could answer, the sky split in another burst of light. Not white like the boom tube, but ruby red. Beams of force shot straight down, carving perfect lines into the pavement, and then the X-Men were there. Cyclops hit the ground first, visor already open in a full spread, his optic blast cutting a swath through the parademons swarming over the block. The street glowed molten where the beam had passed. Storm descended behind him in a swirl of wind, the air around her humming with electricity. With a single outstretched hand, she called down a lattice of lightning bolts that tore across the rooftops, frying a half-dozen parademons mid-flight. Colossus landed with the sound of collapsing steel, his metal form glinting under the storm's light as he charged into Calabac, shoulder-checking the massive new god so hard that masonry exploded around them. Nightcrawler appeared in a burst of brimstone at Logan's side, his yellow eyes wide. "Mein Gott, what is this place?" he breathed, before vanishing again in a banff of smoke to reappear behind Steppenwolf, delivering a kick that sent the warlord staggering a step. "Welcome to the party," Logan grunted, using the distraction to shove Lobo clean off the bike. The Zarnian rolled and came up swinging, hook flashing toward Wolverine's head. Logan ducked it by an inch and drove his claws into the space cycle's engine block. The machine screamed in protest before dying with a hiss of smoke. Jean floated higher, the phoenix flame curling off her in ribbons, casting every shadow into jagged gold. Her eyes flicked between Logan, Lobo, and the X-Men below. Her breathing quick, the fire inside her barely restrained. "You can't stop this," her voice whispered in Logan's head, laced with something both hers and not. Darkseid's forces didn't pause for sentiment. The Justifiers slammed into the X-Men's line, blades sparking against Colossus's armor, while parademons dove at Storm from every angle. Cyclops shouted orders over the chaos, his voice cutting through the rain like the crack of a whip. "Logan, keep her safe. Storm, lock down the airspace. Piotr..." A shadow fell over them all, and Wolverine's instincts screamed before his mind caught up. Something massive blotted out the storm clouds. A warship, its underside bristling with cannons the size of city buses. The first volley hit the street with concussive force, hurling bodies and wreckage into the air. Logan rolled, shielding his face as the storefront collapsed beside him. In the chaos, Lobo was already moving. Not to run, but to fight. His grin was gone now, replaced by the focus of a predator who'd realized someone else was trying to take his prey. He swung his chain in a wide arc, catching a parademon by the chest and slamming it into a Justifier with bone-cracking impact. "You want to dance with the main man," Lobo growled at the nearest new god. "You better know the steps." The street became a killing ground. Cyclops and Storm fought back to back, their powers weaving in perfect harmony. Heat and light cutting through the ranks, lightning cracking through the rain. Nightcrawler darted in and out, pulling down Shi'ar to safety while laying quick strikes into unarmored gaps. Colossus had Calabac pinned against a wrecked bus, the shock prods sparking harmlessly off his steel hide. Wolverine fought toward Jean, cutting through anyone in his path. Shi'ar, Parademon. It didn't matter anymore. Every step felt heavier under the weight of the Phoenix's presence, its power pressing against him like heat from a forge. When he finally reached her, she looked down at him, her face unreadable through the flickering firelight. Then the Phoenix flared, not enough to consume her, but enough to make the rain boil into steam and silence the battlefield for a heartbeat. Every eye, mutant, alien, god, turned toward her, and in that moment, Logan knew they were out of time. From the boom tube, a deeper shadow began to take shape, massive and unyielding, as if the portal itself strained to contain it. The new gods dropped to one knee in unison. Even Lobo's grin faltered. Darkseid was stepping through. The boom tube's light bled into shadow as the shape within it solidified. His presence was a gravity well, pulling the air out of every lung, bending every thought toward him. Darkseid stepped onto the cracked asphalt with the slow, deliberate tread of someone who had never needed to hurry in his life. His eyes glowed with that steady, predatory red. Not the wildfire of rage, but the cold, precise light of inevitability. Rain hissed into steam around him. Even the parademons held their distance, forming a living wall behind him as he surveyed the street with quiet disdain. The Shi'ar captain took a step forward, armor still scorched from the fight. By decree of the Shi'ar Imperium, the Omega beams ignited mid-sentence. They screamed through the air in twin zigzagging lines of light, bending at impossible angles, cutting past Logan's shoulder, between Cyclops and Storm, and finding the captain's heart no matter how he tried to dodge. He disintegrated without a sound, his armor collapsing into ash at Darkseid's feet. That was a warning, Darkseid said, his voice a cathedral collapsing in slow motion. The Phoenix comes with me. You're all dismissed from existence. Wolverine didn't wait for a signal. He charged, claws bared, sprinting straight for the tyrant. Colossus was right behind him, his steel form lowering into a battering ram. Lobo came from the flank, swinging his chain overhead, the hook whistling through the air. They hit Darkseid together, and might as well have charged a mountain. The warlord caught Colossus's punch one-handed, turning it aside with casual force. His other hand lashed out, catching Wolverine by the throat mid-leap. Adamantium claws slashed at his forearm, but Darkseid didn't even flinch. Your spirit is strong, he said evenly. Your flesh is irrelevant. He hurled Logan into the side of a toppled bus, the impact denting the metal like paper. Lobo's hook finally found a purchase, clanging against Darkseid's pauldron. Sparks flew, and Darkseid turned his gaze on the Sarnian. You fight like you believe you cannot die. That's 'cause I can't, Greyface, Lobo spat, yanking the chain back. But you can bleed. He swung again, this time looping the chain around Darkseid's arm and pulling with the strength of a dozen men. The street under Darkseid cracked from the strain, but then the Omega beams flared again, this time not as a warning. They shot low, carving through the pavement in molten lines that erupted into fire and rubble, separating the X-Men from their enemies. The shockwave threw Storm and Cyclops back into the wreckage of a deli, glass raining down in glittering shards. Jean hovered higher above it all, her face caught between fear and something far more dangerous. The Phoenix flickered around her like an impatient storm. Logan could feel it in his bones. She was seconds away from letting go. Then the ground itself shifted. With a low seismic groan, the street folded inward as another boom tube ripped open beneath Jean's feet. Lobo lunged for her, but the pull was too strong. She was yanked into the column of light, the Phoenix trailing behind her like a comet's tail. Jean, Wolverine's voice was raw, desperate. Without thinking, he dove after her, the world stretching and bending around him as the portal swallowed him whole. He caught a glimpse of Lobo doing the same, his bike tumbling into the light after him. A split second later, Cyclops, Storm, and Colossus followed, unwilling to let her vanish without them. The light collapsed into blackness, and the sound that replaced it was worse than the silence. A constant, industrial roar, like the heartbeat of a dying god. They landed hard on metal, the heat searing through their boots. The air stank of burning oil and charred flesh. Above them stretched a sky the color of dried blood, streaked with black smoke from endless factories. Rivers of molten steel flowed between jagged spires, and the horizon was nothing but silhouettes of war machines the size of skyscrapers. Apocalypse. "Welcome to hell, boys and girls," Lobo said, wiping soot from his face and spitting onto the glowing metal floor. His grin was back, but his eyes were calculating now. "Don't bother running. Nowhere to go." Wolverine stood, scanning the platform they'd landed on. A massive forge floor, littered with the bodies of parademons. Too slow to move when they had arrived. Across the span, a single set of massive stairs led up to a throne carved into the wall itself. And there, seated like he'd been waiting for centuries, was Darkseid. Jean was suspended above him, trapped in a cube of shimmering energy. The Phoenix flared against its prison in frustrated bursts, but the construct held. "You followed," Darkseid said simply, as if noting the weather. "That will make this efficient." Colossus stepped forward, but Logan's arm shot out to stop him. His eyes never left Darkseid. "Not here. We need a plan." Lobo cracked his knuckles. "I got a plan. We break his face." Darkseid's smile was almost imperceptible. "Try." And then the throne room erupted. The throne room's air was thick with heat and power, a suffocating mix of molten metal's tang and the electric hum of Darkseid's energy field. The cube containing Jean hovered above his throne like a cruel trophy, the Phoenix within thrashing in golden arcs that scorched the high stone pillars. Every flare rattled the chamber's foundations, dust drifting down from the carved obsidian ceiling. Darkseid didn't rise. He didn't need to. His presence alone filled the room like an iron weight on their chests. His eyes followed their every movement, not with concern, but with the patience of a predator who knew the kill was inevitable. "Logan," Cyclops' voice was low, tight with both urgency and strategy. His visor was already humming as he calculated lines of fire. "We can't brute force him. We need to crack that containment before Jean—" "I'll get her out," Logan growled, his claws snapping out with a metallic shiver. "You keep the big guy busy." The plan barely left his lips before Calabac roared from the side of the throne, charging with his shock prod swinging in wide bone-breaking arcs. Colossus met him head-on, the clang of their collision echoing like a cathedral bell. Sparks flew as steel flesh met apocalyptian armor, the two locking into a contest of raw strength that shattered the marble floor beneath their feet. Storm lifted her arms, the winds of an alien sky answering her call. She drew lightning down from the black clouds beyond the throne room's high archways, the bolts slamming into the ranks of parademons, swooping in from above. They fell in burning spirals, some smashing against the high walls, others plummeting into the molten rivers outside. Lobo was already a storm of his own. Laughing through gritted teeth, he hurled himself into Steppenwolf's path, the hook of his chain embedding in the warlord's pauldron. "Come here, Red Ears, let's make this personal." He yanked hard, pulling Steppenwolf off balance before smashing a knee into his chest. Steppenwolf countered with a backhand that sent Lobo sprawling, only for the Zarnian to roll back to his feet, spit blood, and grin wider. "That all you got?" Logan slipped through the chaos, ducking under a Justifier's blade and planting his claws in the soldier's gut before shoving him aside. His eyes never left Jean, her face pale inside the shimmering cube, eyes flickering between human and golden fire. Logan, it's breaking through. He leapt for the platform beneath the cube, but Darkseid moved. The Warlord's hand shot out, seizing Logan midair by the head. The Omega beams ignited, the glow filling Logan's vision with searing light. "You are persistent," Darkseid said, voice devoid of emotion. But persistence is not power. The beams fired. At that range, they should have ended him. But Lobo's chain lashed out, wrapping around Logan's torso and yanking him free a split second before the blast. The beams curved instantly, chasing their target, but Storm swept down in a vortex of wind, hurling debris into their path and scattering their trajectory into the high walls. "You owe me one, short stuff," Lobo shouted over the roar of the fight, catching Logan as he landed. "Yeah, I'll buy you a beer after we survive this," Logan muttered, shaking off the ringing in his ears. Cyclops took the opening, firing a sustained optic beam directly at the cube. The containment shimmered, the Phoenix insect surging against it in a burst of molten gold. Cracks spread along the construct's surface, light bleeding through like sunlight under a closing door. Darkseid finally rose from the throne. The motion was slow, deliberate, but it carried the weight of a tectonic shift. His gaze fixed on Cyclops. "You mistake resistance for hope." His hand lifted, and the Omega beams flared again. Logan didn't think, he just moved. He hurled himself into the beam's path, the searing agony tearing through every nerve, burning into bone. The force flung him back, but it was enough. The cube shattered in a blinding explosion, the Phoenix erupting free in a cry that shook the very walls. The fire swept over the battlefield, drowning out all other light. It coiled around Jean's form. And then it struck Lobo. For a heartbeat, the Zarnian's pale skin glowed molten, his crimson eyes blazing as the Phoenix force wrapped around him like a second skin. His laughter rolled through the chamber like thunder. "Oh, now we're talking," Lobo bellowed, his body alight with cosmic fire. He tore through parademons in blazing arcs, his chain now a whip of pure flame. Even Kalibak hesitated at the sight. Jean, freed, stood beside Logan. Her voice was her own now, but laced with that terrible, eternal edge. "Logan, we have to end this, together." Darkseid stepped forward, the molten cracks in the floor widening under his boots. "You cannot end what is eternal." The final clash was chaos incarnate. Cyclops and Storm unleashed their full power in tandem, optic force and lightning battering Darkseid's guard. Colossus slammed Kalibak into the base of the throne, the shock-cracking stone. Lobo, ablaze with Phoenix fire, launched himself directly at Darkseid, the impact lighting the throne room in a nova of gold and crimson. Logan was the one who finished it. As Lobo's strike staggered the Warlord, Wolverine dove in low, driving all 6 adamantium claws deep into Darkseid's side. The Phoenix flared in Jean's eyes as she sent a final burst of power through Logan's strike, the combined force hurling Darkseid back into the obsidian wall, with a sound like a world ending. The glow faded. Darkseid rose slowly, wounded but far from defeated. His eyes burned with the promise of return. "You have won nothing," he said before the boom tube swallowed him and his forces whole. Silence fell. The Phoenix retreated from Lobo, its fire coiling back into Jean before dissolving entirely. She looked at Logan, exhausted but alive. Lobo, scorched and smoking, just laughed. "Not bad for a night's work." Logan shook his head. "Let's just get the hell off this rock." And together, with the X-Men battered but standing, they stepped into the waiting portal. leaving Apocalypse smoldering behind them, knowing Darkseid's shadow would follow them back to their own worlds. Epilogue. The portal spat them out into the cold night air above Manhattan. The rain was still falling, but after the oppressive heat of Apocalypse, it felt like a baptism. Steam curled off their shoulders, their boots splashing into puddles that hadn't been disturbed since they'd left. The city was quiet now, too quiet. The streets littered with the wreckage from earlier, but no Parademons, no Shi'ar, no trace of the war that had raged here hours ago. Jean stood on the sidewalk, her hair plastered to her face by the rain. Her eyes, now entirely her own, drifted up to the dark clouds as if searching for something. Logan stayed beside her, silent. He knew better than to press. The Phoenix might have been dormant for the moment, but it was never gone. Cyclops was already barking quiet orders, sending Colossus and Nightcrawler to check nearby buildings for civilians. Storm's gaze lingered on Logan for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of what he'd done in that throne room. Lobo leaned against a wrecked newsstand, wringing water out of his leather jacket like he had all the time in the world. Gotta say, Runt, you and your crew, not bad. Still ugly as sin, but not bad. He pulled a dented flask from his belt, took a swig, and grinned. So, same time next week? Logan smirked faintly. You show up uninvited, you get the same welcome. Fair enough. Lobo pushed himself upright, slinging his chain over one shoulder. Guess I'll go see if there's anyone else out there dumb enough to hire me after what just happened. Before Logan could answer, Lobo revved his space cycle and shot into the sky, a streak of roaring metal and fading laughter swallowed by the storm clouds. The X-Men regrouped, their formation loose but steady, as they began the walk back toward the Blackbird. Logan stayed at the rear, eyes scanning the shadows out of habit. Somewhere deep in his gut, he knew this wasn't over. Darkseid didn't lose. He retreated. Somewhere in the deep between worlds, the boom tube closed with a final hum, leaving only the black silence of the throne room on Apocalypse. Darkseid sat once more upon his seat of obsidian, the wound in his side still faintly smoking. His gaze was fixed on the empty cube that had once held the Phoenix. From the shadows at the edge of the hall, Desaad stepped forward, bowing low. My lord, the Phoenix remains beyond our grasp. Darkseid did not look at him. For now, his voice was low, measured. It showed me enough. The Firebird is not simply power. It is hunger. Hunger can be tempted. He lifted one massive hand, and a faint shimmer of golden flame flickered across his palm before winking out. A remnant of the battle, or perhaps something more. Begin preparations, Darkseid said, his voice echoing like a final verdict. The next time I reach for it, nothing will stand between me and the fire. And far away in a quiet corner of Westchester, Jean Grey jolted awake in her bed, a single ember of that same golden flame glowing behind her eyes.